Hello there, I'm Tim and he's John, and this is How to Murder Time, a podcast about games and things.
Hello, everybody.
Watcher.
It's another week.
It is. Wow, what a week. We've had a couple of weeks off. Generally, because of you being ill.
I've been deathly ill for a couple
yeah,
of weeks, which has really hampered my ability to play games and talk and stay awake.
Yeah. But we're back. We've been playing games. We're doing stuff.
It's okay. I don't think anyone noticed I barely said anything on the last podcast.
Yes. I think I managed to talk for quite a few of us, and we had lots of interesting chat about books going on, despite you, frankly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start. I'm going to start with the Stanley Parable.
You've been critical, darling. The Stanley Parable.
This is the latest in our informal short series of short indie games that are art that Tim hasn't played yet, that he's getting round to.
Okay.
And regular listeners may have remembered me talking about Dear Esther, which I came away from not hating, but finding myself largely unsatisfied. But it was its own thing, and it was interesting.
Okay. How would you describe the game of Stanley Parable?
Insulting.
Wow.
I have to use a word. Yes, I found myself. It got my goat. It got my goat and took it away, and I was cross quite furiously. So the Stanley Parable. Oh God, I don't have to go into details about what it is. Everyone's played it by now. And frankly,
a lot of people haven't.
I don't care if I spoil the bejesus out of it this week. I'm doing my active most to encourage you, dear listener, not to play this thing because it's terrible.
No, it's one of the best games ever made, actually. But keep going.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I know exactly why you don't like it. There's going to be the psychology section afterwards. It's going to be quite interesting.
This is me in the minority then. Is this true art is beyond criticism again, is it? Because I hate that.
No, this is something poking at a psychological bit of your brain.
Yes. Okay, so the Stanley Parable is a story about a chap called Stanley who works in an office, and there's a narration over the top of it, and I don't still quite see what the parable is. Perhaps I'm not really clever enough to spot the layers upon layers of onion type thing that are going on here.
Well, it's all about futility and rebelling, and actually, do you have agency?
Yes, very much so. So it puts you in the office and explains that Stanley is a person who hasn't got much curiosity, who sits in an office and is told what to do and pushes buttons on a computer. It's a sort of kind of pastiche of the sort of kinds of mindless office job that perhaps a great many people listening to this may have to endure on a daily basis to get through, to pay the bills. So they got money so that they can buy and enjoy the things they like in the spare time they have, So, it starts you in the office. It looks a bit sort of Portal 2-y, the office sections of that. And I'm thinking, first person standing here looking at the computer, and off you go. And it drops you in there without any real explanation, without any real objectives or goals or directions. And I get that that's part of the point. I know. So I immediately start looking around the office. Okay, this is an office, fair enough. Start clicking on things. Nothing happens. When I click on anything, there's a computer in front of you. I try clicking. Nothing happens. Nothing happens when you left click. So I'm clicking around, and then I accidentally click the door to the office, managing to shut it. At which point the narrator starts going on about Stanley doesn't like choices and decides to wait in the office for something to come along. And he waits, and he waits. And of course, having clicked on the door, you can't actually then click to open it again, to correct the UI mistake that I seem to have made early on. It seems to
no. You're assuming that's a mistake. It's not.
Maybe.
No, it really is not a mistake.
Yeah, but my intention wasn't to seal myself in the office because I was terrified of choice, which is what it seemed to interpret this as. My mistake was, I clicked on a thing because I'm exploring and I'm curious and exploring the alien and unfamiliar environment I find myself suddenly dropped into without context. So I managed to shut myself into the office, and then it basically the game ends. Yeah. So then it starts again. Obviously, it goes back to the start again, and the second time I did accidentally. That was cack-handedness. I managed to shut myself in the second time as well. So that's already put me. I know.
Wow.
I think I'm pushing on an edge case for the use case there, but. So it seems to make some sort of
failed to get out the first room twice.
Yes, I know. I'm bad at gaming and should feel bad. But then is this even a game? Because it took that as some kind of profound moralising decision-making choice, which I thought I didn't really make, and decided to sort of to basically take the piss out of me for not having enough imagination to get out of the first room, which, wasn't quite...
turns out was true.
Maybe. I don't know. So, okay, third time lucky. I decided, okay, maybe it wants me to leave the room. So I start leaving the room, and it's sort of delivering this narrative, it told in the third person about you in the past tense, which is quite an interesting narrative device, considering that it's you going about this stuff in real time. So I'm looking around the office, and he's saying, Stanley decided to go to the meeting room to find out where everyone was. So that you sort of wander through this empty.
So you
office.
did that, did you?
I wandered through an empty office, looking at stuff, clicking on things, and it basically the first time it opens up into an open plan cubicle area with a number of different offices. I'm interested. I'm looking at the different computers there, trying to click on any of them.
Yeah.
Some of them have got different things on the screens I can't quite read out because the textures aren't detailed enough. And it immediately starts taking the piss out of. No matter how many times Stanley clicked on random things, nothing happened. And I thought, okay, right, I see what's going on here. And I just got a massive grump on at that point. And from that point to the end, followed the instructions to the letter.
Oh,
so the game was over in about 15 minutes. And
so you didn't see any of it? You missed the entire game?
No, I saw all of it. 15 minutes worth.
You missed the entire game.
No.
Which ending did you get if you follow the rules? Can't remember.
I don't know. You end up sort of walking down this big road into the distance, green hills, countryside, sky. Stanley was happy. He wondered about all the puzzles he didn't bother looking at, and I just thought, oh, piss off, you know. Mostly I got the grump on about very early on, and I know, yeah, the very first time. So, okay, the big clever bit that I remember you talking about this a while ago, and the clever bit, the first clever bit you encounter is that when you come across two open doors in front of you, and the narrator said Stanley went through the left door to the meeting room, and I thought, all right, yeah, let's just get on with this, and I went through the left door.
I didn't think you'd be able to not do what he said.
No. Well, this is the problem because it's narrative. It's not so much obedience. This is narrative.
No, it's obedience. It's about obedience.
It's about obedience to a third-person narrative. And the idea of telling a story, presumably if I'm pushing the story on, I need to do what the narrator says.
The point of the game is you don't have to do what the narrator says.
Well, I guess I probably missed the entire point of this game.
You really did.
Yeah, but the point is, I didn't want to prolong this. I thought, okay, it's obviously gearing up for me to come across a big choice. And I saw the two doors, and I thought, yeah, it wants me to go through the left door. I should probably go through the right door and prove what a massive rebel I am, and then have this fantastic gaming experience and be.
Well, no, he just gets sarcastic about. Oh, he thinks he's a rebel, but he isn't. When you do that,
well, that is precisely what I couldn't handle.
Why?
Is the narrator taking the piss out of me throughout this gaming experience?
Was he taking the piss out of you?
Well, he was when I did things that weren't in accordance with the story that was being delivered.
Everything is in accordance to the story being delivered.
I don't think so.
It is. It is designed. That is the way the game is designed.
Yeah.
You do whatever you want, and it's all part of the story.
It's designed like an arse.
No, it's not.
It is. It's rubbish. So there was a bit in a room where a keypad on the wall, and the narrator was basically saying Stanley looked at the keypad and had no idea that the combination was 4832. And I thought, well, I can't type in 4832 because
why not?
Because I don't know. Stanley doesn't know. He literally says there's no way Stanley could guess the combination is 4832. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to type 4832 because I'm trying to adhere to a coherent narrative.
Have you considered seeing a therapist?
I don't know. I thought this was therapy, wasn't it? I'm seeing one right now. This is what this is. So I just waited around, and I thought, well, what would Stanley... I was role-playing, essentially. Role-playing Stanley. Oh, dear, I've broken him. Look at him, he's actually unable to speak. Oh, wow, that's fantastic. I was role-playing Stanley. I thought, well, Stanley doesn't know 4832, so I'm not going to type 4832. So after a while, it says, luckily the keypad's fail-safe kicks in and, Stanley can progress. And I just thought, this whole thing is so wry, so knowing, so smug. I just really didn't care for its tone at all. I just thought, this is taking the piss out of the standard gaming narrative, which is something I quite enjoy.
No, it's exploring
It's
exploring the standard gaming narrative. What does it mean?
I don't know.
And it does it in a way which makes the standard gaming narrative look a little bit flaky at times.
Yeah.
Because the standard gaming narrative is oh so flaky.
Yeah, okay, so this, but that then essentially is inviting me to join with it in taking the piss out of my entire hobby.
Oh.
Something I spend most of my game free time doing over the last 15 years.
So what you're basically saying is you don't want to look at anything too closely in case you realise you don't like it.
Well, no, it's not that. It's that I don't want to have my choices and my recreational hobbies taken the piss out of by some one-shot little indie game that thinks it's so much cleverer than the rest of the genre. Oh, look at me, I'm special. We know, don't we, player? We know the rest of them are stupid. That being given a stupid list of instructions to follow and things to click on.
That's not what it's about. That's not what it does.
It's what it did to me.
That's what you thought it did to you. But then you got someone who got stuck in the first room for 2 goes.
No, that was accidental controls. I could see what it was doing. I basically skipped through it, following the obvious things it wanted to put in front of me each time, and got through it right quickly.
At no point did you try and engage the tone of the game.
I thought I was. I thought I was following along with the narrative that was being delivered.
You were utterly not. You were engaging with the opposite of what it was trying to do. Every single bit of what he's saying is designed to make you not want to do it because he's being condescending.
I guess I'm very obedient then.
You are. You are programmed.
No, well, no, it's not so much that. It wasn't that he's being condescending. I want to do what the opposite of what he said, and that probably would have then opened up like hundreds of hours of engaging gameplay or something. But
about 40 odd endings.
It was so condescending that I thought, okay, I'm just going to do what you say in the hope that this is going to be over as quickly as possible. And it was. So, I guess I sort of beat it. I got an achievement that said beat the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were 10 achievements there, at least 3 of which looked like they were physically impossible.
There's one that means playing it sometime in 2020.
One of them was play it for the entire of a Tuesday.
Yeah.
So presumably you have to be actively...
No,
you have to have it turned on for 24 hours on a Tuesday. One of them is don't play it for a year.
Yeah.
So, it's that kind of smug, aren't we clever, It's like, an adult telling a child, put a thing on your head, like, I don't know, something stupid. Like, put a doily on your head, go on, put a doily on your head. And so the child puts a doily on the head, and then the adult goes, "Ha, you're a dick, you got a doily on your head." And that's the sort of tone
who was
that I
it
got
who made
from
you
the whole
do
thing.
that when you were a kid?
I don't know. That's just an example.
Is it now?
It just felt like the entire game was... warmly encouraging me to help it prove that I was a dick, and I just can't be done with it. I just got fed up with the whole thing.
Yeah,
I found it sort of insulting and condescending, and it's quite smug and wry, and it wanted me to join in with us kind of pointing and laughing at normal game narrative.
So basically, it made you incredibly defensive about,
I suppose,
because it immediately started.
No, I just got annoyed, got fed up with it. Very early on.
Way quicker than anyone else does.
Yeah, I suppose. Yes, I know I should have started playing it again, and I thought, well, yeah, obviously I could just keep playing it and keep trying every different permutation that goes through, but I just don't want to engage with it anymore. It's not even a question of, you should definitely explore all the different endings that are available, because I just felt that, well, obviously it's going to be taking the piss out of me for doing that as well as I go through.
No.
Maybe paranoid. I don't know.
It's not taking the piss out of you at all.
It felt like it.
It
to me.
never is.
I don't know. I was there. That's what it felt like to me. My subjective experience of it wasn't very good at all. I didn't really enjoy it at all.
Wow.
I've
never seen anyone have this reaction to the game.
A bit like Portal 2, but without any of without any of the humour. It was more of a sort of inviting me to take a long, hard look at myself. And I thought, well, why do you get to do that weird little game that I've never really heard of before? How comes this game so special that it has to have a massive amount of credibility behind it before it's allowed to? Not really, no. It's not that I'd particularly enjoy it if it had a hugely credible thing as well. If it had some revelatory position in which it managed to convert everyone away from normal gaming, and suddenly there's this massive rejection of following objectives or waypoints or having any kind of thing that you're supposed to be doing. I mean, I play games because I want to largely watch a story happen.
There are stories in it which happen.
I suppose maybe there's just so many layers upon layers.
Well, no, there's so many different stories. It's got loads of really quite short stories.
I suppose. I mean, I can play it again and go through doing the opposite of whatever the narrator says, but just why? When I've got loads of other games, almost any other game, I'd rather be playing because it's more enjoyable.
It's really funny.
Is it?
Yeah, it really is a funny game.
Well, I'll take your word for it. I guess I'm just too thick, really, to
get
the Stanley Parable at all.
Yeah, I think...
Didn't get on with it.
I think that the game is trying to make a point, and I'm not entirely sure what the point is in your case.
I sort of saw the point, but decided not to engage with it because I didn't really like it. So whether the point it was making was something... perhaps if it had a different tone, maybe if it wasn't quite so patronising and condescending in the delivery.
It's no more patronising than the usual video game story is. That's the point. They are very patronising.
Yeah, but you like to think that you're working with the game on those sorts of things.
No, you're being led by the nose. You're being dragged along with 2 fingers up your nostrils in every other game.
Well, maybe I'm just an unthinking slave of the game design orthodoxy then. I don't know. Maybe I do want to just shut that door and keep myself in that first room. So what did you make out of it all then?
It's really clever and very funny. And yeah...
But you don't really like most games though, do you?
I do.
You're always quite critical of story, quite critical of.
I'm
you don't suffer fools gladly when it comes to gaming.
I'm critical of storytelling in an awful lot of games because it is so badly written, and this is about that to a great extent.
So it's an interesting, different reaction then, yeah.
Because in most games, you end up with just this corridor. You walk along it, do exactly as the game tells you.
Yes, but that's all just a pretext. It's just a reason to be there doing the little dexterity skills and shooting the things.
Yeah, and the moment you start thinking that, you're just thinking, why am I bothering with this game? Because, say, with the order, it looks a bit pretty. And that's the only reason for doing any of it.
The natural conclusion to that line of thinking is to stop playing games altogether, because they're all much of a muchness.
The natural conclusion when that happens
is
to pick better games and make sure better games get made.
Well, I suppose. Does this gone some way to making better games?
I think it made a lot of people question what they were doing and the problems in games, because it basically goes and points them out to a lot of things.
I don't know.
You take one.
Perhaps I'm set in my ways. Perhaps I like the medium that I've grown up with. I mean, yes, perhaps that medium is patronising, but I don't really want something I've paid £10 to be pointing out how stupid my choices are and what tiny little mind I have. That's what it sort of felt like to me. This felt quite abusive, really, faintly abusive, which is partly why it got my goat so much. Partly why I just went, all right, I'll just do your obvious quick way out of here.
No, it's about assumed authority. The only reason the narrator in the game has any authority is because you do what he says. The moment you turn around and do your own thing, the narrator's authority disappears and it becomes something else.
Well, that's fine. I mean, you can sit down in front of a chessboard and just start picking pieces up and throwing them around the room, but at that point you're not playing chess anymore. You might be having fun, but...
that's a weird argument.
I don't know.
But you can play chess in a way that's just following all of the standard openings.
Well, no,
or you can play chess...
Rules.
You have rules. The game still has rules. It's just the guy who's telling you the rules isn't the guy who knows the rules. He's not.
Oh, so the narrator was the antagonist. I never saw that.
No, not really.
Oh, well, I don't know.
No, one of the points is
this is like
that you
was it as a weird game of Simon Says? Did I miss that?
Well, no,
Simon Says follow the narrative.
You're blindly following and believing what the narrator says, when from the start it is clear the narrator has no control over you.
He had a lot of control over me.
Okay, he had a lot of control over you, but then you are very susceptible.
Well, no, because the narration is part of the set of rules, which of what
no,
make
it's
a
not
game.
Though.
It is.
The point is, it isn't.
Well, it isn't in this case, but
only is if you let it.
Well, yeah, but the point is, I was so annoyed by all of this, but I got to the end, I thought, obviously it's not actually 15 minutes long. Obviously there's a lot more to it here. Obviously I should have gone through the right-hand door when I was told to go through the left-hand door. But why? Why bother? I could go off and play some other game instead.
Because of all the humour and the interesting concepts in there. And
well, maybe it should have done a better job of hinting that was there. I don't know. Maybe
it did. It basically screamed at it, go through the right door. Don't go through the left door.
That must have been subtextual then, because I heard him say Stanley went through the left door.
There's an awful lot of psychology in the way that it's said, which makes sure that people go through the right door.
No, I didn't.
I know you didn't.
When someone gives me a box and tells me not to look in the box, I'll put the box down and not look in it.
Yeah, you
won't. For months, for years. I would still have the box and not look in it. That's the sort of person I am. I'm quite...
compliant,
I suppose. Yeah, there you go. So well done me. I paid £10 to learn that I have no free will, which also made me quite cross. So on many levels, this game annoyed and failed to please or entertain. And you can't call me wrong either. You can't say, "Oh, you didn't get it. It's a brilliant game." Because this is a subjective experience.
I'm just thinking this entire experiment may well be a bad idea because the next game's going to annoy you even more.
You're talking about the beginner's guide next, aren't you? That was next on your list, and that's going to be another examination of, aren't you stupid for doing what you're told in computer games?
No, that's an examination on ownership.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I expect to have a similarly I didn't get it rant.
Or you can do Dr. Langerskov and the Tiger and the Heist and what's it?
I don't know. This is the thing. See, it reminded me a bit of when you get stupid pop culture in-jokes in MMOs, like, I think there's some, in World of Warcraft, there's some NPC somewhere who sells bags and is like supposed to be Paris Hilton or something. I just don't like it when somebody else decides when it's time to start taking the piss out of things, you know?
You assume it's taking the piss out of it and not just examining it.
Well, whatever, but I just don't...
It's a very defensive...
I'll decide how seriously I take your thing. I don't want, you know, a game's fundamental narrative premise deciding to, you know, totally subvert the genre because, hey, aren't I different and special, you know? And I think, well, okay, yeah, do that if you like. I'm
then
off.
You are really going to not get on with Beginner's Guide then.
I look forward to a similar rant next time then, I suppose. But yeah, so there you go. I really didn't like Stanley Parable, but apparently I'm wrong, so there you go.
Yeah, okay.
Well, you'll know yourself, dear listener. You've probably listened to us a fair few weeks in a row. You probably know a bit about my personality and about his personality, and you've probably got some sort of idea as to whose personality your personality is more similar to. But if you're like me and an unthinking slave of the orthodoxy, you probably won't get on with a Stanley Parable.
Yeah, but if they're like you...
But at least it'll be quick.
But all I have to do in an authoritarian voice say... You like the Stanley Parable, and apparently you like the Stanley Parable.
Well, there you go. Turns out I like the Stanley Parable.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about a thing? Because I'm quite cross and I'm going to sit here and fume for a bit.
Oh, I'm going to talk about an abomination of a game I discovered.
Okay.
Yeah,
Are you sure you're allowed to not like this game? Turns out that's not really under our control.
Oh, no,
anymore.
I'm definitely allowed to not like this game. It's called Battlestar Galactica Squadrons, and it is an officially licensed Battlestar Galactica game of the remake TV show.
Okay.
See, that sounds vaguely interesting.
Yeah.
The alarm bell in the back of your brain going, I've not heard of this game.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure what games I'm allowed to like anymore.
It's a mobile...
Turns out gaming is bad, and I misinterpreted all of it.
It's a mobile phone game, and I got a bit curious, because,
Okay.
you know, I hadn't heard of this game coming out. Okay, admittedly, I don't usually look, but I thought, what it's like? It's got combat and everything. It could be interesting. It's not. I'll get that cleared out. It's not interesting in a game type of way. It's one of those usual collect lots of ships, level them up, fight them in battles, and if you've got the right numbers of power, then you can probably win the battle. If not, you're going to die. As you'd expect, turn-based combat.
Yeah.
The thing that I really love about this game, and it truly is a gorgeous thing to behold, is... There's two levels of design in this game. There's was in the TV show.
Yes.
And there was the we needed more ships.
Oh, no.
And the we needed more ships has an almost negligible understanding of the design style of the TV show. They think they do.
This is the reboot TV show.
Yeah.
The recent one. Yeah. So as I recall...
Oh, no, there's stuff in the originals in as well. But
Okay.
then they pulled
So
that
as I recall, there are 4 spaceships in that whole show.
There's a couple more.
So you got I'm not counting the big colony ships and things.
Okay.
Presumably you're not fighting with those. But...
Yeah, you've got the,
So you got the
two marks of Vipers.
Yeah, they got the new Viper and the old Viper. You got the Raptor,
Yeah.
and then you got that weird stealth one they built out of spare
Yeah.
parts. And that's all I
Yeah,
remember.
and then
I suppose Cylon Fighter.
Yeah,
as
then
well.
the Cylons, you've got the original series Cylon,
Yeah,
the new series Cylon,
Yeah.
and the Cylon Bomber.
there's a sort of heavy Cylon Raider
Yeah.
thing, isn't it? Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
This game has possibly about 20 ships,
Oh my god.
and they're all terrible. And I can't.
You did show me some of them before we started, yeah. And there's a couple in there that I thought were Star Wars. There's a couple of A-wings in there. Those weird abominations with these giant drop pods that look more like something from Aliens.
The design work on it is just atrocious.
So
Not even trying.
is this because they've come up with a game which requires 20?
Yeah, it's about collecting ships, and you can't just
You
have
can't
Vipers.
just collect 3 ships, yeah, because that's quite a short game.
Yeah.
So they desperately needed to, because it sounds like it's in that case, it sounds like quite a derivative sort of game format based on any number of collect the heroes and level them up type.
Yeah, no, there's nothing original in here.
Yeah, but that format wouldn't work if you've only got 3 heroes.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
it's
yeah,
taken
yeah,
an IP which is not suited for this model and built this model around
Shoehorn
it.
it all in, yeah.
And I'm quite impressed by the fact they've done it. It's not a good game. The other thing I was interested in, you know how these games work where you have your heroes lined up and the other heroes on the other side, much in the style of a JRPG, and they have turn-based combat. Well, they'll leap across, whack them with a stick or whatever, and leap back. Well, this has it with 2 lines of ships, your 3 ships down the bottom, their 3, 5, however many ships at the top, you're chasing them, and then they have to have you shooting them, which is fine, because, you know, your ship just sort of fires, turns direction, fires. hits the enemy ship, fine. Then you have to have, those guys in front have to be able to shoot back. So they end up doing stuff like doing a quick 180 and firing back, or doing a loop around and firing, and it just looks terrible.
Yeah. It's just one of these sort of squad-based collect the monsters and level them up type. Is it a phone game, isn't it?
It's a phone game, yeah.
Not that that's necessarily a bad thing in and of itself, but it's a form that's suited to mobile phones. It's a form that's suited to a minute or two every day. Yeah. And you've got various currencies and energy, and you're only allowed so many fights a day, presumably. Yeah. So, it's not a surprising format to anyone who's played any kind of phone game, but just having it sort of inexpertly, having Battlestar Galactica shoehorned
I was amazed at the one thing the game had going for it, they managed to screw up.
And that sort of thing can potentially work, because we've seen that Star Trek one. Is it Timelines?
Yes, Timelines exists.
That involves loads of different ships and different characters. Maybe, I don't know.
Galaxies of Heroes is adding spaceships soon.
Are we just is it effectively just shovelware then? Is that
it really is.
Right, we've got this license.
Yeah. Sci-Fi has given
game.
this license, so let's see what we can do with it.
Yeah, and presumably what they're hoping to make their money from you buying loads of gems or whatever the hell.
It's not working so far.
What is the currency? What have they called it in there?
Oh, Tillium.
Tillium. There you go.
Tillium's the turn-based currency, but then there's PAX, where you goes through, looks in the fleet archives, and finds ship designs.
Oh God. Yes. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. Don't play it.
So, if you are remotely interested in this, what should you be playing instead?
I
think the Star Wars
a good book. Go watch the TV show.
As we've discovered earlier, all games are facile anyway.
Yeah, you shouldn't play games. Shouldn't waste your time with games.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. Are we talking about games anymore?
Yeah, I think we have to.
I mean,
we've got a couple of weeks before we're allowed to talk about books again.
If I've learned anything about from the Stanley Parable, it's that I'm wrong. So I'm going to talk about Guildwars 2.
Yay!
I'm going to talk about the story of the Heart of Thorns, because game story and so on. So I've been playing a lot of Guild Wars 2, that's in the static group and solo as well. Been working away at the Heart of Thorns, which is the big expansion there, and working away at the story in the Heart of Thorns, and I finally finished it. It was all right. I say all right. It's on the low end of all right. It's a lot of the big problem with the. For starters, we've got problems I talked about before when I've missed a lot of the lead-in, because that's now time-locked expansion, mini content that you can't get. So I'm dropped into the middle of this ongoing story with a whole band of heroes who are like my best friends and stuff, who I've never met before and don't really care much about. It's like the original NPC power team from the base game content, this Destiny's Edge lot. It's sort of a bunch of one representative from each of the player races who's like supposed to be your mentor and a kind of paragon of your race's virtues and so on. And they all band together and have a load of big fallings out, and part of the story of that first game is getting them back together and joining with them to defeat the big monster. It's not an original story. See, that's I suppose if nothing else, Stanley Parable has taught me to treat all narrative with suspicion and faint distaste now, so well done there. So by the time you get to Heart of Thorns, half of them are missing, half of them have been captured and disappeared or gone all over the place, and you've been introduced to, you've got a whole load of other B team of NPCs that are following you around and on your little power team of awesome. Yeah, so this story's delivered in a kind of little fragments and instances throughout the main content of the Overland Zones, a bit like the first game. But a lot less. It seemed a lot less personal, a lot less time spent with like big glorious characters talking to each other, cutscenes, and it's a lot more of it happens sort of in world with just speech bubbles appearing over your normal character's head and stuff. So there's that. And the big problem I have with this story is the pacing's all over the place, I think. Because what they tried to do, they basically tried to write and deliver a story it's the sort of classic 24 hours of hell. It's they try and do it as a really fast-paced race against the clock rescue mission. But the trouble is the delivery of it involves going through lots of different instances, and you're unlikely to do the whole thing in one go, which means you're going to stop, start. And so they're trying to build this sense of urgency and we've got to get to them. We've got to get to our friends who have been captured in time before something terrible happens to them. And but meanwhile, the story is also trying to deliver a kind of guided tour of all the new mechanics and all the new zones, and it's a real disjointed, now we're going over here, now we're going to talk to these people, and who's this, and it's just quite quite unsatisfying, I suppose. It would probably make quite a good book, or even, you know, feature film, I suppose, if they, you know, actually cast it and everything. But as a sort of story in an MMO, it follows the same sorts of problems in that, you know, you can't really make any meaningful long-term impact on the world around you, I suppose, because MMO. So I don't know. I got through it. There's a lot of I don't know. I wouldn't call it gear-gated difficulty. I think it's just the usual high-end Guild Wars 2 problem of constantly having to stay on the move, constantly action, tumbling, you know, builds, etc. And then it all culminates in this massive boss fight at the very end of it all. I don't want to talk too much about specifics because I think a couple of the chaps are still working through it in the Tuesday group there. But the last stage where you get to deal with the nemesis at the very end there is this really unimaginative, well, it's I don't know, yeah, quite an imaginative boss fight thing. It all takes place in the mind of the adversary. You go and fight him in dreams or something. It's all a bit weird, and he must have a very unimaginative mind and dreams, because essentially it's a large circular arena with multiple stages of a boss fight with various telegraph special attacks. It took me a couple of goes. It took me about 8 or 9 goes to get through it in the end, and I'm pretty sure the last go, it started giving me pity buffs. I think I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So you got this multiple staged. He keeps changing, and there's new people getting called in, and you got to fight them. And I think the power of friendship is a relevant factor in all of this at the end, which is quite disappointing. But mostly it's a quirky old fight with some very odd mechanics that sort of get dumped on you halfway through the fight, and I had to go and look it all up halfway through as I was waiting between resurrects. It uses the whole gliding mechanic quite a lot in this fight. You're doing a lot of don't stand in the circle, a lot of keep out of the way of his cone attack, a lot of stand in the middle when he does this sort of attack, move out to the outside when he does this sort of attack, kite these sorts of bosses round while he's invulnerable, and there's an extra adds and so on, you know, all this sort of stuff. Yeah, okay, not terribly imaginative, but you know, manageable. You can cope with it. But then he goes into some superpower mode where he just basically sets the floor electrical, and the only way you can avoid this is by jumping on these very difficult to spot updraft things and deploying the glider when you're at the top. If you jump on these, remember, all the way through you've been learning that jumping on updrafts is how you do it. If you jump on them, it doesn't work. You got to walk into them and then push F. So, you know, so I died a few times working that out.
Typical Team A, Team B.
Yeah, exactly. So you walk into it and up you go, and then you manage to deploy your glider at the top, and then you're supposed to go around in circles while the floor's on fire. So because if you land on the floor, it's not instant death, but it's such a high tick DPS that you'll die in seconds if you land on it by accident. So you have to keep flying between these updraft things until he goes back into his fightable mode, and that's fine. And then you go and do another 3 or 4 waves of kite him, stand in the middle, stand on the outside, kite the boss, blah blah blah. You picking up I'm not enjoying this vibe? Yeah. Maybe Stanley Parable was right and I'm the idiot. But so then the next time he does the glide, you know, because if a thing's fun, it's 3 times the fun if you do it 3 times. He does on the second or third go with the updrafts and electrical floor. He starts picking up chunks of masonry and throwing at them while you're gliding, and you've got no skills as a glider. You are just literally having to dodge and stuff. And now, with the gliding mechanic, if you do a lot of grinding and a lot of leveling with these mastery points, which are your sort of advanced mechanic for the end, you know, beyond the end, alternate advancement type XP train, you can unlock extra abilities with the glider, like being able to push forwards and back to speed up and slow down. You can't do that to begin with. And then there's stealth gliding. If you dodge while gliding, you go invisible for a bit, but I haven't unlocked that yet. That would have been nice. And I think there's one at the far end of gliding where if you unlock it, and this is like, you know, loads and loads of these mastery points later, you effectively lose the endurance bar for gliding, which means you don't sort of suddenly
stop. That sounds useful.
You suddenly stop gliding otherwise when you run out of time or whatever. Anyway, so he's lobbing these chunks of masonry at me, and every time it was just one hitting me with these, because it knocks you out of the sky and you land on the floor, and the floor's electrical and will kill you in about 2 ticks. So that's about as far as I got, I think, and I kept trying at it because, as the Stanley Parable has shown me, I'm obedient and an idiot. So I think I got to about 4 or 5 goes in on this, or maybe 7 or 8. It was about 2 hours in on this one in one fight. You can restart from about a third the way in, so that was something. I didn't have to restart the entire thing. And I sort of bounced up and appeared to suddenly be in the next stage, and also appeared to suddenly have a whole row of blue buffs along the bottom. Things like 15% run speed, things like cannot be knocked down. There was a good number of these here, and I thought, hang on, where'd they all come from? That seems a bit forgiving for a stage in a boss fight. And I thought, oh, I see. So I think if you just keep bashing your head at it enough times, it will give you pity buffs, and so that you can get through it. And frankly, I was just relieved, and it kind of marred and spoiled the entire story of the campaign, really, to be honest. I don't know if I'm looking for some kind of solo dungeon raid experience as the culmination of my personal story in this game.
No one is.
There are other... Well, this was exactly the problem with the original base content for Guild Wars 2 in the first place, is that your personal story culminates in a 5-man dungeon.
Yeah.
That you have to try and find people who haven't already done it in story mode, because remember, you only do story mode once, and then you don't do exploration mode, because that's where all the loot is. And you basically get led along for 79 levels of relatively interesting story content, and then suddenly bang, group pick up group run random dungeon hell. And that dungeon at the end of base Guild Wars 2 involves a lot of weird quirky mechanics as well. It's not your straight use your abilities and skills to cause damage that it had been training you to use for the past however many months you've been playing. It was all sorts of weird stuff with cannons and flying things and all sorts, and they basically went and did more or less the same thing again here. Now, you're probably not watching this on the video, because the clip I brought, because I was just so fatigued and furious I forgot to push record during any of that. So what you're watching instead is the culmination of the Dragon Stand Zone meta event. Now, this is the big redeeming feature with... I mean, the story is not that great, and it culminates in an awful boss fight that I would be happy if I never saw again. I'm going to have to get 2 more characters through there at some point. But what Heartthorns does do is present you with 4 or 5 decent zones that have quite a well-coordinated overland meta event, which basically all the players in the zone at the time can all help towards, and they require a little bit of coordination, a little bit of shouting out on zone chat, and some people flag up with the commander tags to try and organise things, and they pay out fantastic loot at the ends of it all, but they are all generally quite good and well thought out and quite well structured. These big sort of massive public quests are effectively what they are. They kick off every 2 hours or so. You can turn up, there'll be a whole load of people in the zone doing stuff, and it encourages you all to work together on lots of different objectives to get the same thing done. Then usually they'll sort of funnel into sort of smaller tasks with more people, and eventually into one big boss fight at the end. And that's really good. I quite enjoy turning up and taking part in those. There's a sense of camaraderie, which everyone's in it to try and do well, and very few people get all arsey on zone chat and recriminatory if it doesn't go wrong, which is something you might expect. But the Dragon's Stand one is really good, because it basically creates... It sort of sits there waiting for 5 people to be gathered at each of 3 different NPCs. Once that happens, it starts off. So basically it guarantees that at least 15 people are taking part, and divided into 3 teams, 3 lanes. This is all MOBA terminology, presumably.
Yep.
But... So you start working all down these lanes, and it's basically a series of pushes on various waypoints. And as you get to each one, then the pushes stop, and you have to go off and do various reinforcing tasks to help bolster the push. The various little events at each of those waypoints. Then the whole zone moves on to their next waypoint, and so on. And you do this about 3 times. And the last one is this insanely coordinated fight, which frankly I'm surprised works, but I've done this thing twice now, and it seems to have worked each time. But what you need to do is basically take out this massive structure in the centre of each of the 3 lanes, your 3 different teams of players. All the while you've got to be killing off these NPCs that come in and try and heal it. So you have to break your each of your lanes team into a team that goes in circles killing the healers all the time, whilst a small squad breaks off and goes for the guy in the middle. And all 3 of those guys in the middle need to be killed within about a minute or 2 of each other across the entire zone. So it's astonishing that kind of coordination is possible. But I suppose if you put a task in front of people enough times, they'll work it out, and it becomes relatively common knowledge. So as a sort of relatively untutored and first time newbie, I turned up and was able to help, and it still worked. So enough people knew what was going on that it went through. And then after that, you end up on this fantastic end boss fight on a series of floating islands that you use the gliders to get between, and you have to sort of break up into teams on each of these. I think it's about 7 or 8 islands, and you have to distribute your players all amongst them, because there's these flower things grow on each island, and you have to beat them down, because if the flowers absorb enough energy, there's like 2 different progress bars. One's the boss, and one's the flower absorption thing. If the flower absorption bar fills up before the boss is killed, then the whole thing fails. So it's quite quite pacey, quite exciting, and the boss is fantastic. He's basically almost architectural. He's this giant worm thing on the end of a sort of enormous sort of snake monster worm thing, giant thing that sort of loops over and around all these islands, and very spectacular. You can see some of this on the video, but. And then, eventually you kill him, and he's not even the end boss. He's just the end boss's, lieutenant or something. The end boss is this stupid thing you did in that circular arena on your own on the story.
Yeah.
So, by far the meta event, the Dragon's Den meta event is by far a more interesting culmination and fascinating gaming mechanic-wise thing to be doing than the sort of stupid hard mode, near impossible yet strangely unimaginative solo thing that you end up doing. I don't even know if you can I think you can possibly bring friends with you on that boss fight. I don't know if it would help though. I think friends get to be a liability at that point. I'm pretty sure I got given pity buffs. I got through it. I wasn't happy, whatever, done. But I'm really enjoying just turning up for these zone meta events. The Auric Basin one is, very widely populated. That involves killing four different boss fights simultaneously to get into the central city of it all. That, again, it's this sort of camaraderie working together and the spectacle of it all. These are large, spectacular things going on each time, and that's what that's what I'm looking for in these games, rather than these little solo go off into an instance and fight a wave of mobs, and then we'll have some more exposition dumped on you by our resident token Azura team member. It's sort of strange contrast between the sort of solo stuff, which the personal story stuff. I don't know. I mean, it carries on after Heart of Thorns, the Living World 3 stuff. I'm chipping at some of that now, and there's things about Bloodstones and White Mantle and things like that. I just want to see the zones, to be honest. I'd quite like to see the Ring of Fire, because I got fond memories of that place from the first game. It's largely my nostalgia driving me on, I think, into the story there. But I think the important thing is not to get too bogged down into the story that you miss out on what the game does well, which is its large-scale meta events, particularly the Heart of Thorns ones, are very, very interesting and a lot of fun. Worth taking part in if you can get them all unlocked, get the waypoints, get out there and join in. As for the personal story, it's all right, whatever. So still playing that. Moved on beyond there. And I'm sort of, in a way, this personal story was a kind of impetus to keep moving forward, impetus to keep playing, because without that, it is essentially just sort of top end gear refinement through token acquisition on these events and stuff. And you can rinse and repeat that a fair amount, but eventually you're going to get a bit bored of it all. I suppose at that point you just walk away and play something else, which is perfectly natural and fine. But yeah, so in general, I'm still enjoying Guildwars 2. Disappointed with the personal story, but very pleased and impressed with the zone events that go on out in the Heart of Thorns zones. I think Heart of Thorns on balance is probably worth it. You get the interesting thing, the gliding mechanics, fun, the advanced archetypes, your elite specializations, Chronomancer, Berserker, and so on. They're interesting, interesting novel ways to mix things up, give your basic class some new ways to play. Personal story, meh,
yeah,
whatever. But there you go. I suppose there's a lot of soul searching I should probably be doing about story in computer games then, and I look forward to more experiments on your big list of things I need to try next. But yes, Guildwars 2 still playing. Over to you.
Okay, I'm going to talk about another phone game because
have you played any normal games?
No. Actually, I played a bit of Doom, but yeah.
Okay.
Which is still an excellent game. No, this is Formula 1 2016. On the phone.
A phone game about Formula 1. Is it a team management thing where you have to collect lots of different cars?
It's a racing game with driving and racing and driving.
Oh, wow, that sounds like that might be quite good.
It's not bad. The biggest problem with the game, as expected, is the controls.
Yes. Presumably, how does that work? Do you have the two circles on each side of the screen?
You have two choices. You can either steer by tilting.
Okay.
Accelerate by hitting the right-hand side, braking on the left.
Yeah. How sensitive is the tilting?
Very.
It's good, is it?
Well, you know what it was like on your phone when you did the VR stuff.
Yeah. It had problems tracking back to centre. Is that a problem?
No, not at all.
Is your dead zone all right?
Yeah, that's fine. Or you've got one which is like that with the accelerate and decelerate, but also you've got an on-screen steering wheel.
Yeah.
Which I actually found a little harder to control. Graphically, the game looks stunning. It looks sort of not early 360, but when 360 was bedding in, kind of thing.
Okay. That's not bad.
Does
that make the phone hot?
I haven't noticed it make my phone hot yet, but I'm sure it will.
Oh,
and you've got the usual stuff, like you've got season racing, quick races, full race weekend, time trial. There's a weekly event, which is basically you do a time trial on a set track, and there'll be
it's a sense of sort of keeping the community engaged with updates and regular things happening. Yeah,
and the game actually plays well. In fact,
does it work well as a sort of waiting for a train for 5 minutes type of thing, or do you have to sit down for an hour to get anywhere?
That's the problem. You have to play a bit too long.
Okay.
Because even if you're
doing a
3-lap race,
yeah,
and your lap's 2 minutes, then it's quite a long chunk of time, and you can't really pause it and not do stuff. So, when you're doing any other game, you would just sort of tab out to respond to the text message or whatever. With this, when you go back, you then got the whole, I was halfway through quite a difficult corner, wasn't I?
Oh, wow, it doesn't pause.
No, it pauses, but you go back, and then you unpausing when you're thinking, okay, so actually I've got my steering and my accelerator just right to get through the chicane. And now I've got to do that again halfway through the chicane.
Yeah. So I mean, we're more often criticising phone games for being too light and too fluffy and stuff, but what you're finding here is that the opposite's the problem, in that this is perhaps a bit too substantial to be doing on a phone. It's
not the sort of thing that you're just going to be nipping in and out constantly throughout the day. It's one of the things you're going to be sitting down for a couple of minutes to play.
Yeah.
The other issue,
it's good to have the options, because a lot of games are just do spend 2 or 3 seconds tapping things and you're done.
The other issue is, by default, the auto steering and the auto braking are way too harsh. You can basically hold down the accelerator and sort of steer, and you'll finish a lap no problem. Okay, that's great, and it makes you feel like you know what you're doing to start with, but then you realise, hang on, no, those are on. So then you have to then go turn them off, and you realise actually it's a lot harder to control than you think. And the issue with auto braking, of course, is when auto braking is on, it makes overtaking really hard, because outbraking someone into the corner is your primary way of overtaking someone in a racing game. And so if it's auto braking, it gets a lot harder to do it.
Yeah, you need to be in control.
And so it does take a bit of skill to actually get up to a proper racing ability.
But by default, it has all these helper things turned on, does it?
Yeah, and you will want to turn those down. You'll really want to turn those down.
Fair enough.
But apart from that, it's a good example of taking a console and PC game and putting it onto a phone in a way that doesn't sacrifice the game.
It sounds encouraging, that because week after week you've been telling me about the the level up your team of monsters type games over and over.
It's $7.99 and no microtransactions.
That's
one fee.
That's good too. That's almost unheard of in these games.
Which I really appreciate.
It's probably going to doom it to utter obscurity, to be honest. If people just thumbing through the Google Play Store.
It's
a
niche game for a niche sport.
It's a bit sad that gaming on the phone.
Some games still do it.
A huge barrier to entry for gaming on the phone is charging any money at all.
Yeah, some games still charge, and it's good that some games do. And the more developers who stick to it and say, right, we're going to charge an upfront for it.
Takes guts, though, I imagine. Yeah.
Any developers doing that, in this case, Codemasters, more respect to them for actually still sticking to that and doing it, and not just completely selling out. I saw a thing about Molyneux's new game, which is complete.
It's a sort of race to the bottom, isn't it? There's so many games on there, because I look through. I do try. I go through the old Google Play Store for the phone.
They're all dross.
There's so much, but there's so many in there that are free. You think, well, why do I have to pay anything for it? Why should I pay anything? And it's very difficult to get any kind of appreciation for quality out of that without buying stuff. And of course, why buy stuff if all you're looking for is something to just keep you occupied while you're waiting for a bus? It must be so difficult to earn money. The way you earn money is by all sorts of psychological tricks to get people to spend money on on gems or whatever, isn't it? You could do even more if you gave us some money. And you think, all right, okay.
And next thing you know, you've managed to get those people who are paying 50, 100 quid per month, and then you're.
But those sorts of people, they'll happily pay 50 quid a month on gems or whatever. But there's no way they'd pay like £2.49 for entry to a game. A game.
They'll pay 100 quid a month to get lots and lots of currency, but won't pay the 7 quid or whatever.
7
to get
quid
the
for
game.
a game with no microtransactions in it. Yeah, but then are there? I mean, that's all very well, but you often get games where you have to pay £3 and still there's a shit ton of microtransactions in there as well, which is the worst of both worlds, I think, and that probably sours it for people who do want to charge a flat fee and not exploit people.
That is definitely true.
Yeah, so it must be a very difficult market to get into at all, I think. Unless you're giving it away for free, no one wants to pay you.
No. Yeah, it's a ruined market, and I think that there's not much of a chance of it ever coming back to something that isn't all
it's selling people on the idea of quality, isn't it? It's how do we differentiate, how do we convince people that some games are much better than other games and are worth £10 or whatever, and how do you do that at all? I don't know, but this is I suppose the perils of trying to turn people's smartphones into a new gaming platform in a new marketplace. You're not really selling to people who are used to paying £40 for a well-constructed
you're
game.
paying people who've been trained.
Yeah, exactly. People who just don't see games as something you invest in at all, I shouldn't think.
And then invest in them.
Well, yeah, but perhaps in ways that aren't quite as wholesome. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite good.
But you found a good one?
Yeah. Everything about it's good, up until the point when you realise it's quite boring.
Well, is there not the ultra focus of refining gameplay? Getting the perfect lap time.
The controls let it down too much.
Because frankly, I'm right there. I totally agree. All racing games are boring. You're just driving a car around a track.
I understand that, but I really like racing games, and I'm finding this one a little bit boring.
But obviously there is the connoisseur aspect of it. When you really know the medium.
The F1 games on console and on PC truly are about getting that lap time and doing it perfectly.
Yeah.
And the controls on this game, because it's on a phone, don't let you have that level of finesse needed, or aren't letting me have that level of finesse, which I think really does let the game down on is this actually a fun, great game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also going to be difficult. I mean, it's the technical problems. That's why we don't see the breadth and wealth of games we normally see on proper consoles and the PC, making it to the phone as sort of straightly translated experiences, because you've got very fundamental physical problems there. Well, I wouldn't say problems, but certainly you can't just port
restrictions.
Yeah, and in a way it's a shame, because so many of the games from like the 90s through to the mid 2000s would be perfect on modern smartphones, technology wise. The stuff from the sort of early and mid Pentium era, will have screen resolutions and RAM requirements and CPU requirements that most modern smartphones are easily capable of dealing with now. But those games from back then had a keyboard and a mouse and quite a large monitor to look at, and how do we deal with those? I mean, it's always going to be the problem going forward for any smart devices, smartphones, is the human interface aspect of it.
Especially on a phone where the mere act of having your hands on the screen obscures the screen.
Yes, the screen and is the controller as well. Yeah, you need
which is why the more tactically puzzly type things work better than a more hands-on interactive thing.
But then even if you had, it's not like you could sit down at a bus stop with a full PC mouse and keyboard anyway. So
you can using that wireless backpack-based VR system,
or without looking a bit special. No, I mean it's more the sort of social appropriateness of that situation, rather than the technology involved per se. I mean, we need different sorts of. It's no good just porting games from couch and desk to the bus stop. We need different sorts of games that will go with it. And so I think perhaps what you found there is an example of perhaps a dead end, a bit of a red herring. It sounds like a game.
It's an experiment, and
more suited to conventional gaming than the standing at a bus stop experience.
I'm not entirely sure it has a market, but good on them for trying, and we'll see if it does actually sell, and if they can make it into more of a game.
What we do still want to see, I suppose, is quality games for these platforms. Rather, I mean, the control system might be an issue, but the idea of a proper game turning up on a smartphone is a good one. It's
a very good. Yeah, I have no qualms with what they're doing. It's just maybe it's not the best game to be doing it with.
Yeah, fair enough.
So it's good, but I'm not sure I'd recommend anyone play it.
Right. Well, I'm done. I've had my faith in gaming shattered enough for 1 week. So
yeah. No, and I've only play mobile games, so I'm no longer a gamer either.
Do your spiel.
If you go along to hownomadatime.com, you can find all our previous episodes, including the venerable old Van Hemlock podcast, which I'm currently re-listening to all of for reasons. And
narcissism, I imagine.
That's
why I re-listened to them.
The number of games that we talked about in the first couple of episodes, which are closed now.
A terrifying legacy.
Yeah. Yeah, that was back when you still thought it was an MMO podcast. You can also go along to YouTube, where you can find all of our current videos and everything, including our new Defect video we did, or Defect, which people seem to quite like. Also our Regrowth series, which I can pretend it's coming to an end, but I still don't believe it is.
I think we've made some real progress in
upcoming
episodes.
Upcoming episodes have progress. Do not fear, dear listener. There is progress coming.
There's quite an emotional roller coaster coming, but it ends on a high.
Yeah.
And plans forward for the future. Hurrah.
That game is completely full of, we should really go back and do this boss. We should go back and do that labyrinth. We should go back and do...
Keep putting off these things.
Yeah, we should really go back and do that labyrinth. You can also catch up with all of our previous podcasts, including the book review one, where we talk about books. Next time's
the
book
Left Hand of Darkness.
Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin.
Yeah.
I got the one with the most old...
That's quite an old school cover. It's very 70s, isn't it? It looks like a prog rock album cover.
It really does. That's why I liked it. Yeah, it really stood out to me.
It's an interesting book, and it contains issues, and I'm sure we'll have a good old chat about it.
Yeah. You also catch us next week when we'll be back on the podcast talking about something I don't know what yet, because I haven't planned it.
So spontaneous.
We're very spontaneous.
See you next time.
Goodbye.